Hi guys. So I'm going to be doing now a series of videos about work from when I graduated college till now. I was hoping to do 3 videos, but there's a lot to cover, so it's going to be 4 videos, and they're all going to be fairly long. Because I'm going to go into detail, I want people to know the struggle. When you're in school, everyone holds your hand and tells you how great you're going to do, and then you get chucked into life and there's no one supporting you. No one cares you have a disability. So I want to paint this picture for people. Also, there's been some bad luck, just some interesting weird things that have happened to me. So I graduated, and I'm going to be looking at notes a lot, so I apologize. So I graduated with my ECE diploma in April of 2012, and I have to say, graduation day I did not enjoy one bit, because even though I hate school and I am never going back to school, or very, very unlikely anyway. It was still a constant for me. There was never a question of, deciding what to do with my life because it was go to school. So when school ended, it was extremely anxiety inducing. I didn't really know what the future was going to hold. I didn't have the confidence to really be an ECE. Because when you're a student, even the last semester students, the expectations are still not quite the same as the teacher who's actually running the room. And, realizing that, it made me wonder if I could do the job. So when I was job hunting, yes, I would apply for ECE positions, but I was also looking out a lot for special needs positions. I talked about in previous videos about working at summer camps with kids with special needs. And to be honest, in college, I should have done either child and youth worker or developmental service worker. That would get me much, much farther with special needs than ECE does. ECE is really for people working in daycares, or there's other things they do, but that's what it's really formed around. Um, but what happened was when I was picking ECE, because I talked about how when the nursing didn't work out, and I was in a major depressive episode, sorry, and my mom told me to, either find another program or get a job. I basically grabbed a Seneca course catalog and picked ECE because I'm like, I like babies, sure, why not? Um, but DSW and CYW were not in there. And in fact, I didn't know about DSW. When I did that co-op placement with community living in the group homes for adults with intellectual disability, I thought the staff were PSW. I thought they were saying PSW to me. I didn't know DSW was even a thing. Um, so yeah, I ended up as an EC. I sort of chosen on a whim, and then I finished it because of one of my professors telling me that she didn't think I would, so I became determined to finish it. And then now I'm graduating, and I'm not really sure what to do with myself. So I did start just applying everywhere. I did start throwing out a lot of resumes. The only people who bit in months and months and months were 2 school boards. Where I live, each county or region, the words are interchangeable, has a public and Catholic school board. Both school boards interviewed me. The Catholic board interviewed me for an ECE position working in a kindergarten classroom. That went nowhere. The public board interviewed me for an educational assistant position, and they work with children with special needs. And school boards will use ECEs for that a role. Um, well, different boards have different criteria, and the public board actually don't require a lot of educational background or whatever, so I thought I was actually at an advantage. I did very well initially. I was very excited. I did not get the job. Uh, Now I have no desire whatsoever to ever work for a school board, but at the time, it was very disappointing, and it still eats me. I don't understand why I didn't get the job. I know I was qualified, and I know other people with different or less educational backgrounds have gotten the job. So I'm not gonna lie, it does bug me. It doesn't make any sense to me, that one. Um, but I didn't get the job. And what I decided to do, because nobody was biting, it was late in 2012. I contacted the government agency that is responsible for my benefit money that I get every month, which I'll discuss in another video. And they gave me a list of employment support providers for adults with special needs. So I chose one. I was connected to a worker. I started working with her in late 2012. She honestly did not do much. At one point, she came out of the woodwork and set up an interview for me, but I was given bad bus directions, which was not her fault, and I ended up having to walk 3 kilometers because it was in a new development that was sort of on the outskirts, didn't have buses really yet. So my heels were bloody. I was late for that. I did not get that job. Then she disappeared back into the woodwork for a while, and I was continuing to job hunt on my own. In the early April of 2013, I thought I got a job. I remember the day so well. It was a little bit of wet snow. I remember it so vividly because I thought someone had finally hired me a year out of college. I thought I finally had a job. I interviewed with an organization that oversees a number of in-home daycares. And the lady went over my resume and said that she would definitely hire me as a one-to-one to work with a child with special needs who needs extra support in the program. What she told me was that at that moment in time, they didn't need any more one-to-ones, but she said usually in September they got an influx of children. And she said they will need me by then. They always have, they always hire early, so they have them when the kids start. So she told me to just wait, basically, and if I hadn't heard by September, to give her a call. So I thought I had a job. I thought this was in the bag, and I decided in the meanwhile to see if I could maybe find something temporary or part time because I still had a few months to fill and I had like no money. So I was still looking around, and my employment worker, came back out of the woodwork. Told me to go to a YMCA job finding place thing, and the YMCA place set me up with a daycare. They hired me as a supply staff. I went, I think, 5 times in 2 or 3 weeks and never went back. I should have, in the interview, I should have followed my gut. The place looked very barren, did not look like a good childcare center. Um, and it's also the only childcare interview I've ever had on a Saturday, so maybe that was weird. I'm not sure now. But I went, like I said, about 5 times. The first time I went, I never wanted to go back. They had like 4 and 5-year-old children spending 2 solid hours doing worksheets. I didn't want to go back there. My mom encouraged me not to quit. They actually sent me to a different location, which was really nice, and that encouraged me to stay. But I did ultimately end up quitting because the main location, they had me booked for, supposed to be 6 days. And the first day I went in, it was a Friday. It was supposed to be that Friday and the whole next week. Someone was on vacation. They threw me in a room with 5 toddlers, gave me zero instruction, which unfortunately, and gave me zero instruction, and 5 toddlers to one staff is ratio, so that part is fine. But they gave me no instructions, criticized everything I did all day, and what ultimately happened was a toddler, sorry for squeamish, his wet diaper went wet to his pants. So I changed his pants, and I put the pants in a specific place. The children's cubbies were in the hallway, so I couldn't leave the room to put it in the cubby. So I had the pants in a bag in a specific place. And when my shift ended, I went to get the pants to move them to the cubby, and they weren't where I left them. So I asked around the other rooms in case they ended up somewhere else somehow. No one had them, so I went to the supervisor as I was leaving, thinking it wasn't the end of the world, to let her know about the pants, and I apologized and blah blah blah. Her response was to hand me a key for the garbage room on a hot May day and tell me to start digging. I did not find the pants, and I went back in, and by this point I was freaking out and desperate. And I'm like, tell the parents I lost them, use my name. And she was like, well, we can't. Somebody lost something earlier this week, and we told the parents it was you. I was not in on the day in question. So they used my name in a complete lie. They used me as a scapegoat. So I wish I'd had the guts to quit while I was standing there. Instead, I burst into tears and left and called later and left a voicemail saying I would not be returning. Uh, so after that debacle, I didn't really think I would work until that other job started in September. But somehow I found a summer camp job posting in late June. Usually they're well hired by then. I guess somebody backed out at the last minute. So I got hired by a summer camp, and it was nowhere near my house. I was traveling really far into a very poor area of the city, which was an amazing, eye-opening education, I must say. I'm not a rich kid by any standards, but this was still, I'm glad I experienced it. I had a great summer. Some weeks I was a one-to-one with a child with special needs, and some weeks I was just a floater covering breaks if there was no special needs. The staff were good to work with, the kids were good to work with. It was a fairly, it was a simple, straightforward job. I understood what I was doing. I had a great summer, and if I could have done that job for the rest of my life, I would have, because everything has worked for me. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to replicate that experience. So, when the summer ended, September came along, I called back the lady who interviewed me in April, and it was now a different person in that position, and she had no idea who I was or what I was talking about. So that job I was so excited about getting never happened. I briefly considered going back to school to do something called a resource teacher. I actually applied to the college. I'd been accepted. And then just as quickly, I turned around and changed my mind. And I wonder to this day what would have happened if I'd gone through with that. Um, I would have been starting in the fall of 2013. I'm trying to remember if I applied there before or after the interview with that lady. There's a detail I'm missing here because it doesn't make sense to me why I would have applied for school knowing I had a job. So I'm not remembering something correctly. I'm sure of it. But regardless, I did not go through with doing that school program, and I do wonder about it. It would have got me in with more special needs, but it also would have been more responsibility. I have no stamina. I'm not good at being stressed. It's something I don't fully understand because I see other Aspies or people on the spectrum who have jobs and do normal jobs. So it's something I don't understand why I get overwhelmed so quickly. But I think being a resource teacher would have been overwhelming. So I think I probably made the right decision. Plus, I wouldn't have met my friend that I'm about to that's going to come up soon. So I didn't go back to school, and that lady at the home daycare agency didn't know who I was. So I started applying around. I applied to an agency that runs before and after programs. They have a main office, but all their programs are run out of schools. And at one of their programs, they had a child with autism, um, and they hired me to be one-on-one support for him. And I actually hadn't applied for that kind of position. I just applied as an ECE, and that's what they hired me for. So it was only 2 hours a day. It was 3:30 to 5:30. No, sorry, it was 3:15 to 5:15. That's relevant. And it was only the 2 hours a day because the government or something would only give them 2 hours of coverage. So I took that job, and initially I had no issues. I went, did my job, kept to myself. Um, and I decided to maybe see if I can, add in a morning job, piecemeal together some more part-time jobs. So I started looking around. I did get a couple more part-time jobs. I was hired as a supply staff for a very small nursery school program. It was a nursery school program that ran 9 a.m. to 12 a.m. They hired me as a supply. And then a daycare, and the nursery school was really nice because it's not a daycare. They're not there all day, and they don't have to run all this, intense scheduling and stuff. They're just there for a few hours for fun, the kids, so it's nice and relaxing in that regard. The other part-time job I got was a daycare, and she hired me also as supply, and she was understanding of the fact that I had this weird 2 hour day thing going on, so she would, shorten my shift so I could get from one to the other. So that went well initially. That went well. The nursery always went well. Never had an issue there. At one point, so I'm gonna be, I think, wrapping up probably in about 5 more minutes here. At one point, everything was going so well with those three jobs that I actually thought if I threw in a fourth job, I could piecemeal together a living and maybe move out. Move out is a recurring theme with me, to be honest. I interviewed at one place, gym. I interviewed in their childcare room, didn't get hired. I did have a lady in home daycare show a lot of interest in me, but I couldn't do it because of the bus. The bus I needed only ran at rush hour. I couldn't get from one job to the other midday. It was ridiculous. So I decided not to look anymore and just stay with the three I had. And I also did some volunteering at a Good Life Fitness gym. Good Life Fitness is a Canadian gym brand, I guess, or franchise. I did one morning a week at volunteers in their childcare room. I got the idea after the other place rejected me. I figured I could at least volunteer. So everything was going well until about late January. And then things started to change at the after school program where I was working. And I almost wasn't there actually for the January because like I said, the child only got 2 hours of coverage. I was there from 3:15 to 5:15. So if the mom came later than that, she got charged late fees. So she was gonna pull him out because sometimes she needed him later than that. So she was gonna pull him out, and I was gonna be moved to a different location. And I was pretty okay with that. I had, I guess, mixed feelings. But then one of my coworkers, who's now my friend, she's like, "Why don't you just, move your shift forward half an hour? Because the program starts at 3:15 because that school ends at 3:15. But my kid was being bussed in from another school, so he didn't get there till 3:45. So my coworker's like, why not just shove your shift back, make it 3:45 to 5:45, and then his mom doesn't have to pull him out. So the supervisor approved, so I did that. So in January, that starting in January after Christmas break, that was my shift, and I had my two other part-time things going on, my volunteer thing going on. For a little while there, everything was good. The problem was that one of the staff in my room got replaced. In that place, there was a lot of, I'm gonna call it reverse racism. There were 5 rooms of children. Each room had 2 staff members. My room had 2 plus me, and there was a supervisor. All of the staff, except for the 2 plus me room, all of the staff were of the same ethnicity, and we're basically ganging up on those who were not. And I was not that aware of it because I didn't arrive till 3:15, and later on 3:45. I wasn't there for the hour before the kids get out, but they had prep time, where I didn't know how bad the interaction was with the staff, how weird, frankly, it was, until the lady in my room got replaced, and the man that came in was also of that ethnicity, and he was much more open with this weirdness, and it became a lot more hostile. And my one coworker I've become good friends with now. And at this point, I was just starting to learn of challenges in her life. So for me to know what this person was going through, and then to hear the other staff saying horrible things about her was extremely difficult. And I ended up handing in my 2 weeks notice because I showed up one day and it turned out my coworker had gotten moved to another location. And even though, and she was keeping me sane. That last little while there, she was the only thing keeping me sane in that place. And once she left, it ramped up even more. Because now they would just outwardly stand there and just say things about her. I ended up in tears, like at the bus stop waiting to go home. It was awful. And because it was a 2 hour a day job, I wasn't working 9 to 5 to feed my kids. I didn't have to work something I hated. I didn't have to deal with this baloney. So I handed in my notice, and I'm gonna wrap it up there. It's sort of a cliffhanger because at this point I'm still employed by the nursery school and the daycare. So I'm gonna wrap it up here with me handing in my notice because that place went weird. But I am still friends with that person. I do not understand what was going on in that place with the other staff towards this person, and etc. etc. I don't understand. I will never understand, and I hope to never experience it again. And thank you for today.